Salawat Tunjina is not merely a prayer for relief. It is a rescue rope hidden inside desperation itself. Many people recite it for years while their hearts stay sealed, their du'as unanswered, and their fears untouched. Tonight, you will learn the missing inner state that makes this salawat open doors. Some du'as rise quickly because the tongue speaks while the heart breaks open behind it. Others remain heavy because the mouth moves, but the soul still hides from Allah. Salawat Tunjina exposes that difference immediately. Iftirah, sacred broken Salawat Tunjina, begins working when your pride finally becomes too tired to stand. That is the first secret many people miss. They treat this salawat like a formula instead of a surrender. They repeat the words with speed, counting numbers, chasing results, watching for signs. But the old scholars never described salawat as magic. They described it as adab, meaning sacred manners with Allah and His Messenger. The heart matters first. The phrase Tunjina means save us or rescue us. That word changes everything. A person who truly asks for rescue stops pretending they control their own life. Something inside them softens. The performance ends. Their need becomes honest. You can hear the difference. One person recites Salawat Tunjina while secretly believing their own plans will save them. Another recites it after every full certainty collapses. The words sound similar. The heavens do not receive them the same way. This stage feels painful at first. Your old confidence dies here. You begin seeing how often you treated dua like a transaction. You asked Allah while still worshipping your own control. You wanted help, but you did not want surrender. Many people live here for years. They keep collecting du'as without allowing themselves to become needy before Allah. They fear vulnerability. They fear tears. They fear admitting weakness even in private worship. So their tongue asks, but their ego still negotiates conditions. That is the trap. The trap says, if I say the correct words enough times, Allah must respond exactly how I want. But Salawat Tunjina breaks that mentality apart. It teaches dependence, not control. The exit is simple but brutal. You stop performing strength before Allah. You speak honestly. You let yourself feel helpless without shame. You stop reciting to impress heaven with discipline. You recite because your soul finally admits it cannot survive alone. That is when the salawat begins breathing. Salawat sending light before asking. There is a reason the prayer begins with blessings upon the Prophet. Before mentioning rescue, the ego always wants its own needs first. Real adab reverses that instinct. You send love before requests. You send honor before desperation. You place the beloved at the center before placing yourself there. That movement changes the heart. Immediately, the scholars understood something modern people often forget. A heart trapped inside itself becomes spiritually blind. Fear grows larger there. Anxiety multiplies there. Every problem feels personal and permanent. But salawat pulls the heart out of its own prison. You stop orbiting yourself. When you send salawat sincerely, your inner state begins changing before your outer situation changes. Calm enters first. Softness enters first. A strange dignity returns to your pain. You remember that Allah already opened impossible doors for those more broken than you. This is why many people feel relief during salawat even before their dua gets answered. Mercy arrives before. Out comes the person who lives in this station. becomes gentle without becoming weak. Their speech slows down. Their panic loses power. They stop demanding immediate answers from Allah because they trust His timing more deeply. Even their sadness changes texture. It no longer feels abandoned. But another trap appears here. Some people become attached to emotional comfort instead of transformation. They love the peaceful feeling of salawat, but avoid the obedience it demands afterward. They want spiritual sweetness without spiritual change. That sweetness eventually fades. The exit requires alignment. Your actions must slowly match the salawat, leaving your tongue. You cannot ask for rescue while feeding the habits destroying your soul. You cannot send blessings upon the Prophet while proudly carrying cruelty, arrogance, or dishonesty inside your daily life. Salawat Tunjina is not only asking to be saved from hardship, it is asking to become the kind of person who survives hardship without losing. Faith that is far harder, and the next stage reveals why some people receive answers quickly while others unknowingly block their own du'as with a hidden husn al-san, beautiful. Trust in Allah. Many du'as die inside suspicion before they ever rise toward heaven. A person recites Salawat Tunjina while secretly believing nothing will change. Their tongue asks Allah for mercy, but their heart expects abandonment. They have memorized the words of hope while emotionally living inside despair. That split poisons dua. The Prophet taught that Allah responds according to the servant's expectation of him, not because thoughts create reality, but because the heart reveals what it truly believes about Allah's mercy. Salawat Tunjina forces that hidden belief into the open when you say, "Save us from every fear and distress." Your soul immediately answers back with its real condition. Some hearts whisper, "Allah can save others, but not me." Some whisper, "My sins are too heavy." Others whisper, "I already waited too long." That is not humility. It feels humble because it sounds sad. But deep inside, it quietly limits Allah's mercy. The ego disguises hopelessness as honesty. It calls despair realism. Yet despair is still a veil. Between the servant and Allah, this stage feels strange from the inside. You begin noticing how often fear controls your relationship with Allah. You obey Him while expecting punishment. You make dua while preparing emotionally for rejection. You ask softly because you fear wanting too much. Many religious people live here silently. They pray, they fast, they recite. Yet deep down, they believe Allah tolerates them more than loves them. Their worship becomes heavy because trust never enters it. Every hardship feels like proof they were forgotten. That is the trap. The trap says, protect yourself from disappointment by expecting little from Allah. But that mindset slowly kills intimacy with Him. You stop hoping boldly. You stop asking openly. Eventually, your worship becomes survival instead of love. The exit begins with honesty. You admit your fear directly before Allah instead of hiding it behind religious language. Then you continue making dua anyway, not because you feel worthy, but because Allah's mercy is greater than your worthiness. That changes everything. A person with husn al-zan, beautiful trust in Allah, walks differently through hardship. They still cry, they still feel pain, but underneath the pain lives certainty. They know delay is not abandonment. Silence is not rejection. Closed doors are not proof of hatred. Their heart remains open, and once the heart opens like this, another hidden sickness appears immediately. Ghafla, the sleeping heartsome. People wonder why their du'as feel empty while spending their entire lives spiritually asleep. Ghafla means heedlessness. It means living disconnected from the reality of Allah while still performing religious actions outwardly. The body worships, but the heart wanders everywhere else. This disease destroys depth. A person recites Salawat Tunjina while scrolling endlessly, feeding envy, drowning in noise, chasing approval, and numbing their soul every night. Then they wonder why the words feel lifeless. The heart cannot burn with remembrance. While drowning in distraction, the old scholars compared the heedless heart to a rusty mirror. Divine light still reaches it, but the reflection becomes distorted. The problem is not Allah's mercy. The problem is the layer covering the heart itself. This stage feels normal in modern life. That is what makes it dangerous. You wake up anxious. You check your phone immediately. Your thoughts stay scattered all day. Silence feels uncomfortable. Worship becomes rushed because stillness exposes the emptiness underneath. So you keep consuming more noise. Many people never notice the damage. They think spiritual numbness is adulthood. They think constant distraction is normal. But deep inside, their soul feels starved. They can no longer taste worship properly. Even Quran begins sounding distant. That is, Ghafla and Salawat Tunjina attacks it directly because Salawat gathers the scattered heart back toward remembrance. Every sincere repetition pulls your attention away from dunya, the lower world, and back toward Allah. But another trap appears here too. Some people become obsessed with external repetition, while avoiding internal presence. Their tongue moves thousands of times, but their awareness never arrives. They count numbers carefully while remaining emotionally absent. Quantity cannot replace presence. One moment of awake remembrance changes a heart more deeply than hours of empty repetition. The scholars knew this. That is why they focused on hada, meaning inward presence, during dhikr, remembrance of Allah. The exit begins with slowness. You stop rushing sacred words. You recite fewer repetitions with deeper attention. You protect moments of silence. You allow your nervous system to settle before worship. Slowly, your inner hearing returns. Then something unexpected happens. You begin noticing how much fear secretly controls your life. Not dramatic fear, quiet fear, fear of losing status, fear of uncertainty, fear of rejection, fear of people's opinions, fear of not being enough, fear of what tomorrow might bring. And suddenly the lines save us from every fear. Stop sounding poetic. It becomes painfully personal. Tawakkul, radical reliance. Most people say they trust Allah, while